Good morning and welcome back. This is World Talks coming to you live from Warsaw. I'm Jastrzębska. On May 9th, one of Russia's most important national rituals, the Victory Day parade in Moscow, will look much different this year. The event has long served as a powerful symbol of Russia's identity, commemorating the Soviet Union's victory over Nazi Germany in World War II. However, according to the Kremlin, this year's parade will be scaled back due to what officials described as a terrorist threat from Ukraine. To discuss the shift and what it potentially means, I am joined by Sergei Erofeev, sociologist at Rutgers University. Good morning, sir. Delighted to have you with us.
Good morning, Sally.
So let's start with trying to grasp the importance of the May parade. How important is this event for shaping national identity and collective memory in Russia?
Well, Sally, we have to remember that in principle, Putin's rule is non-ideological. It's a mafia state governed by a mafia core, at the very center of which is Mr. Putin himself. It's a highly personalist regime. But nevertheless, this regime needs some kind of ideology, pretense ideology, and quasi-ideology. So for decades, Putin has been relying on two very important reference points in order to create this quasi-ideology to legitimize his rule. Number one is, of course, the historical victory of the Soviet people over Nazis. And the second, highly mythologized reference point either, is the lawlessness of the 1990s. And respectively, Mr. Putin, to his own benefit, in order to prolong his rule, make it possibly endless, he promoted two ideological cliches, two surrogates, two constructs. One is patriotism, which is based on the first reference point, and the second is stability. So patriotism is connected to the idea we can repeat that, we can do it again, like our grandfathers did to the Nazis, to the German Nazis. So now we can do it to any other Nazis. And the second means stability, and everybody in Russia remembers the hardship of the 1990s. So this is very, very important for him to sustain his power. But we have seen since the very beginning of the war that the very fact that this war was launched against a brotherly nation, and hardly anybody in Russia believed in the existence and threat of some Ukrainian Nazis. So the first myth of the victory in the Second World War was already undermined. And now Putin is trying to put a brave face in a losing game with this war against Ukraine, which he lost on day one, taking into account his fundamental goals about this war. So that was lost during the very, very first days. So it's dragging on, and now even forcing him to scale down the military parade, no heavy machinery or tanks. It's unheard of. So it's a very significant blow to his so-called impression management. He needs to use these methods, these ideological constructs in order to stay in power. And we see many signs of his rule weakening here and there. And that is even reflected by the Kremlin-controlled pollsters, showing some visible drops in Putin's ratings.
Right, we're going to get to this in a moment, I hope. But in a recent statement, Volodymyr Zelensky has said that Ukrainian attacks on oil and gas infrastructure in Russia have cost Russia $7 billion this year alone. So what is the messaging around this in Russia? What is their narrative?
Well, again, Putin is trying to put on a brave face. He's losing one battle after the other battle. He never managed to prevent Western unity behind Ukraine. So that was the battle lost during the first days and weeks of the war. He never won over the Russian people. The only field, only area where Putin is still more or less victorious is so-called cognitive war. This is the information war. He's trying, and sometimes very, very successfully, to persuade the West and Western leaders that he is strong and that he is strongly supported by his own people, which is not true. But it's very hard to show to the rest of the world if you don't have access to measuring public opinion like you have in the West. So this messaging is of the same nature. Putin is trying to tell you, I am strong, I'm in control of things. I can even offer a ceasefire for the Victory Day to Ukraine. But it's, it betrays the fundamental weakness behind that. Ukraine has managed, as you referred to Zelensky, to cause serious damage to Putin's economy. And despite the fact that the oil prices are very high today, Putin's juggling, he's struggling, and he needs to both find money for his war effort, and he, at the same time, needs to continue somehow to convince the public in Russia, but even more the Western public and Western leaders that he is in control. That's his favorite saying. Everything is under control, everything is going according to plan, but the plan, did it actually involve almost canceling victory parades in Moscow, scaling them down? If that's the plan, well, the West should think twice before they engage in any kind of negotiations with Mr. Putin. He remains the kind of social actor, not a political partner, but social actor who can only be forced to do certain things. And the West and Ukraine should continue to work with him from the position of strength. That's the only chance to end this war more or less justly and with fewer losses.
I know that data is limited here, but if you were to evaluate Vladimir Putin's domestic standing at the moment, what would that be?
Well, as usual, we sociologists who observe the situation with data collection in Russia, we point out that you can't trust the absolute values of any graph, of any tables. All these data, all these diagrams, they reflect some reality, but not in absolute numbers. What matters is the tendency, the trends. If even the Kremlin-controlled pollsters show that his rating is going down, it doesn't matter from 80, from 70 down some percentage points. What matters is the trend. And we can see that it's going down. Historically, one has to be reminded that despite our distrust in absolute figures, we know perfectly well that Putin's rating went down significantly in 2013, especially in the end of the year, which was followed by his radical solution of this problem, the annexation of Crimea. And the same happened in the fall of 2021, when Putin's own party, despite massive electoral fraud, showed unprecedented weakness. That happened in 2021. And Putin's ratings went drastically down in 2021, especially in the end of the year. That we know. Now, the response to that was the full invasion of Ukraine in order to boost those ratings. What can Putin do now to boost his ratings? We don't know. He actually exhausted his instruments, because how further can you go than this full-scale war? Putin will never use nuclear arms to defeat Ukraine or to show his strength to Ukraine because he is a lover of life. He's hedonistic mafioso leader who wants to live and not to die for some sacred ideology. He has zero ideology, only pretense ideology. Part of which is, of course, this victory celebration in Moscow and all over the country.
So what indicators should the observers look for to better understand shifts in Russian society?
Well, there are many indicators. First of all, everybody by now has noticed that even the official pollsters point out this decline in Putin's ratings. But there is more than that to it. We have every day, not only anecdotal evidence, we have multiple channels to measure or somehow evaluate the public opinion, the public moods in Russia. We hear every now and then that there is something happening which shouldn't happen, like the mass slaughter of cattle in Siberia, or more importantly, maybe for Putin's situation, that his people don't welcome at all the limitations on the use of Western messengers, social networks, and generally limitation on the use of the internet. And there might be various reasons for that. It's been speculated that Putin simply is afraid that he would be traced down like Khamenei in Iran if there is a very rich internet infrastructure in the country. So that might be the reason for certain acts. But the main cause for these actions is, of course, to prevent the public from horizontal connections. But these horizontal connections, the demand for them, we observe every day. So that's the main indicator to understand that the Russian people don't want war. They want peace talks, they want ceasefire, they want to come back to normal life. And equally, the elites in Russia also want to go back to the olden days when you can peacefully work, earn your money, steal money in the old corruptionist way, as they successfully have done before. So nobody needs this war. But the indicators of which you are talking are exactly those, that there is a constant pressure which is not formed because there is no political force which can easily unite people around this or that cause. But it's there, it's visible, and this visibility should be recognized, should be acknowledged by Western leaders. And it's time to think more of how to help the Russian people. But the best help to the Russian people to get back to normal and to help stop the war is to deny Putin his legitimacy, to tell yourself and the rest of the world that Mr. Putin is not a politician. He's not someone to be negotiated with. He can only be pressured. He's a mafioso in power. He's a capo di tutti capi who, in the early 2000s, tried to explain to the country and the rest of the world that he won over crime and that he won over various regional mafioso groups, organized crime. But the reality is that the capo di tutti capi simply subdued all the other capi. So he is the boss of all criminal bosses today. And that's the reality, that's the sociological reality, that's the fact which needs to be recognized. Once it's recognized better, it will help to better figure out what is going on with the Russian public.
By all means. Sergei Erofeev, thank you so very much for joining us this morning. Much appreciated.
My pleasure. Thank you.
And thank you for watching World Talks. Please stay tuned for more here on TVP World.